So if you're not exactly loving work this morning, spare a thought for the poor guys tasked with vaccinating 900,000 cows this week. Nothing like a bit of perspective, eh? My friends, this morning, Multichoice ramps up on the war on piracy. South Africa's exports face a carbon crackdown, and a Comrades runner is found hypothermic near the Durban harbour, more than 15 hours after finishing the race. Let's get into it. And kicking us off with current affairs, South Africa is now the second biggest piracy hub in Africa, just behind Kenya. And the scale of damage is staggering. I mean, every Premier League match streamed illegally reportedly amounts to about 24 million rand lost. Formula 1, nearly 800 million rand lost per race weekend. And when I say lost, I mean it's what broadcasters would have additionally earned from streaming rights, advertising, and licensing. So Multichoice says that local content takes a serious knock too. In 2024, they spent half their entertainment budget on South African productions. But when these shows are pirated, the entire supply chain suffers. So as a result, their anti-piracy arm is now going after IPTV services like Waka TV. It's these paid platforms offering illegal access to premium content. And a recent crackdown even led to the arrest of a police sergeant linked to Waka's operations in Paarl. Either way though, with subscriber numbers falling and losses mounting, Multichoice isn't just protecting content, it's quite literally fighting for survival. And onto our quickfire mentions, Joburg is now going after the city's worst defaulters, wealthy residents and big businesses who owe millions. And under these new rules, the city can now deduct outstanding bills straight from property sale proceeds before anything reaches the seller. Next up, I'm happy to report that this year's Comrades Marathon raised over $6 million for charities like Chalk, Rise Against Hunger, and Childline. One runner even brought in 165 grand, part of a fundraising drive that's almost becoming as competitive as the race. And finally, I'm happy to let the Cape Townians know that hiking trails into Kha and Silvermine will reopen on July 1st after April's fires. Sadly though, picnic areas and river walks remain shut due to burnt infrastructure still awaiting repair. And onto our finance section, more than 400,000 South African jobs are now tied to exports, heading to countries enforcing new carbon border taxes. And if we don't green our grid, we could lose access to those markets. That's the warning from the Net Zero Tracker, which says that South Africa exports over 78% of goods to net zero countries like the EU, the UK, and China. These are these nations that are aiming to cut emissions to near zero by 2050. And those markets are rolling out what are referred to as CBAMs. It's these tariffs that punish imports made with high emissions electricity. And South Africa's coal-heavy supply chain is putting metal, auto, and agriculture exports at risk. So in the EU alone, local metal producers face billions in extra tariffs, and South Africa's carbon footprint is currently twice that of its closest competitor. And this report says that we have the tools, the minerals, the renewables, the influence, but without foster reform, we risk becoming uncompetitive by default. And with global buyers now factoring in total supply chain emissions, the clock isn't just ticking, it's already running down. And onto our quickfire mentions, Alex Forbes just declared a special dividend after winning 186 million rand in a legal fight with its UK insurer. But with this in mind, a second round litigation is still underway with another possible windfall on the table. And next up, as mentioned in the intro, spare a thought for the poor souls vaccinating 900,000 animals this week. Foot and mouth outbreaks have hit Gauteng, KZN, and Mpumalanga, with quarantine zones and meat exports on edge. And finally, Mercedes-AMG's new SL63 has officially landed in South Africa. A 430 kilowatt twin-turbo V8 convertible priced at 3.9 million bucks. Top speed 315 kilometers an hour. Just in time for another roadwork zone. And onto our sports section. The South African Rugby Union is now technically insolvent, reporting a 95 million rand loss last year. the biggest in nearly 3 decades. And while things are looking better in 2025, the sport's top brass says that it is a red flag that can't be ignored. The loss came after a failed deal to sell 20% of Saru's commercial rights to a US private equity firm for 1.3 billion rand. The proposal was blocked by member unions, partly because it gave investors an outsized board presence despite a minority stake. So Saru still brought in nearly 1.9 billion rand in revenue last year, but costs outpaced earnings, and there's no reserve fund for future shocks. So for now, new sponsors like FNB and Pick n Pay have helped plug the gap, but without long-term capital, the next crisis could be more than just a line item. And onto our quick fire mentions. Don't ask me why, but our government has put 90 million rand on the table to bring VAR to South African football. But with no system currently selected and proposals still under review, it's looking unlikely to be ready for next season. And next up, it's worth reflecting Brad Binder's promising weekend in Aragon ended in frustration after showing real pace and flirting with a top 5 finish before he crashed out on lap 12, just when it looked like things might finally turn around. And finally, I had a few Portuguese guys messaging me asking why I didn't cover the Nations League final. So here it is. Portugal beat Spain on penalties after a 2-2 draw. Ronaldo scored, cried, and lifted the trophy, while Yamal was mostly marked out of the game. And next up, before we hit the wildcard section, here's something to chew on. In 2024, what percentage of all South African imports came from China? Was it A, 6%, B, 16%, or C, 22%? We'll give you the answer in the closer. And onto our wildcard section. After Sunday's Comrades marathon, one runner didn't make it home. Moira Harding was found nearly a full day later, disorientated, hypothermic, and lying near the Durban harbour, 7 kilometers from the race finish line. Construction workers initially mistook her for someone out training before realizing that she was in distress. NSRI responders were on site, recognized her race number, gave her first aid, and called in a helicopter to rush her to hospital. So authorities are still piecing together how she ended up there. There was a storm overnight and she was found rather close to the water's edge, but she had no visible injuries. Her conditions were described as critical and SAPS is now investigating. For now though, the only certainty is that she narrowly escaped a much worse outcome, and that a fluke sighting by maintenance staff may have just saved her life. And as for that bagel bite, the answer is 22%. According to the UN's Comtrade database, China made up over 1/5 of all South Africa's imports in 2024, almost $22 billion worth. That's more than triple what we brought in from Germany or the US. Moral of the story, no matter the politics, the container ships keep on coming. And that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day further. Be kind to one another, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Cheers.